for now, past and future meet. Get your weapons ready, kiss loved ones goodbye. Now our time is coming, and it is not the time to cry. Fight the war. Fight the war. Fight the war. Oh, who cares why we're fighting? It's about the fight. Let the writers writing settle wrong from right. In the time of conflict, when the bullets fly, in the space of seconds, a life you cannot buy. Face the facts before you, face the simple truth. We're hopelessly outnumbered, it's tragic but it's true. Make your last formation, take the final road. Now it's time for endings, now it's time to go. Fight the war. Oh, fight the war. Fight the war. Souls in the ruins, or rubble in the streets, corpses near the buildings, all is light and heat. Time to take a stand, boys, time to make a choice, time to find our courage, time to be deployed. Make our own stand here, make our own complete. All we waited for now, past the future meet. Get your weapons ready, kiss the ones goodbye. Now our time is coming, and it is not the time to cry. Fight the war. Oh, fight the war. Fight the war.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm fighting the war because it's a Monday. Though I don't usually stream on this night, but you'll see why I'm streaming in a minute. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Arvanauts, to a Monday night stream. It is a special edition of the stream. It is February 5th, 2018. It's just about 8:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying themselves on a pleasant Monday. Congratulations to any Eagles fans. Mostly, I can just say thank God the Patriots didn't win. But otherwise, happy Monday to everybody. And this is a special event, actually, for us. I was not planning to stream today, but as it turns out, I have been called into action because I'm going to be part of a conversation about the movie you see on your screen, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and I will introduce the gentlemen who are with me in this discussion in just a minute. Before I do that, a couple of reminders about ways to support the stream. Please follow the channel if you haven't done so already. Please make sure to check out a lot of the other things that we have for you, like, for example, the YouTube channel, !ArvTube, where I keep past broadcasts of this stream. If you want to talk more about this elsewhere, you should check us out on Discord, !ArvCord. We'll get you over to there. Financially, you can support us by checking out the shop, !ArvShop, with lots of merchandise over there for Infinity and Beyond, my flagship D&D campaign, but more is going to be coming to that store soon. !ArvTreon, currently sitting at $4.15. A lot of cool things you can get for yourself and for the channel by supporting the Patreon. And last but certainly not least, of course, that sub button, which is right above the window there. There's no exclamation point. You just hit that purple button if you want to sub to the channel. I also want to remind and ask everybody everybody about the thunderclap that we are doing. Exclamation point thunderclap. We have a unique campaign coming up, the Esper Genesis campaign, which is going to be starting officially here on February 23rd, as we announced last week. Friday, February 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern. We will be teasing out some details about the players this week, and we'll be announcing the list of players officially next week. But we would love it if people could become a part of that thunderclap, because this is a game on 5th edition rules with Star Wars, appropriately, Phantasy Star, and Mass Effect all tied together. It's super awesome space opera role-playing, and we are going to be we are officially sponsored by Alligator Alley, which is the company that releases that game, and I'm really looking forward to streaming it and to doing a campaign in it. And the thunderclap would allow you to be able to support it by having a bunch of tweets and things like that go out from all the people signed up for the thunderclap. It costs you no money. There is no privacy concern. They're not going to data mine. They're not going to do anything. All they're going to do is tweet out from your account at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on that Friday, or Facebook post, or I think it's Instagram is the other one. So if you're able to support it by doing that with thunderclap, that would be awesome. And this here is the details for that. So if you're able to support by checking that out, the Thunderclap campaign, that would be lovely. All right, with that said, it is time tonight. I'm going to be back you guys for my normal streams tomorrow, but it is time now for us to get into the actual event, and I have now unmuted myself so they can hear that we're ready to go, and then I'm going to unmute them, and now I'm going to bring forward, I'm going to get rid of The Last Jedi. I'm going to bring myself onto the stream as soon as I can find where the heck I put my webcam in this ridiculously large list. There it is. And then, hi, everybody, by the way. Good to see you all. And now I'm going to bring on one person, two people, and their names. Ladies and gentlemen, my great pleasure to introduce as part of this roundtable discussion the two gentlemen who are sitting to the left on the screen as you guys look, and that is, of course, Eric Vulgaris and Johnny, otherwise known as Video Store Cowboy, who gets all the credit for having arranged this discussion in the first place after a little Twitter that we had. So, gentlemen, it's a pleasure. Eric, how are you, first of all? How are you, and where can the fine people find out about you if they don't already know? I mean, they should, but, you know.
Oh, Arv, I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to this. So I hope you're doing well, chat. How are you doing too? I hope you're doing great too. And of course, Johnny and I have just been talking about role-playing games as one does socially before the show. And yeah, who does that, right? Who does that? So yeah, no, I've been just absolutely just blown away with role-playing games lately. I've just been riding the role-playing game high. So hopefully, you know how that's like, what that's like.
Hell yeah.
And anyways, yeah, thanks, man. I'm super happy to be here and talk about Star Wars.
Awesome. And Eric has been on Masters of the Dungeon with us before. Also, having been on Masters of the Dungeon with us before, is the gentleman below who is wearing a baseball cap in a shameless attempt to throw off my Whalers cap, and will fail because he's just an MLB shill, whereas I am a Whalers fan, and that's a total different. No, it's a pleasure to have, of course, the GM of Blades in the Dark, who has really been killing it with that campaign, by the way, which I know is coming to, well, at least part of it anyway, is coming to an end soon. But that, of course, is Johnny with Video Store Cowboy. How are you, sir? And yeah, tell the fine people about it. It's almost like it's finishing later this evening, right? Or at least a part of it is. Yes.
So we had to cancel last minute. So hi, I'm Johnny.
Oh,
with
you
Video
did?
Store Cowboy. Yeah. So we had to cancel last minute on Thursday, and it was our last show. I ate something and had an allergic reaction, and as I'm getting older, I'm developing allergies in ways that I didn't expect. So I had to basically, drug up and chill out. So tonight we're ending it completely. It's 100% done for the time being. We might tell other stories in that world, but for the time being, this will be the last time that we visit Blades in the Dark in 6 and 20. So it's going to be fun.
Although you are starting a new 6 and 20, or am I wrong about that?
We are starting tomorrow night. We're actually going to premiere a new system, mostly new casts on the 3 channels, and we will be playing City of Mist and exploring mythology, superpowers, superheroes, and the dark side of what all of that means.
Very cool. And there's a certain gentleman that is well known to the people in this channel who is our lovable voice actor Trendane, who will be participating in that because he's been talking about that. That's awesome. You guys should absolutely check that out. But we are here tonight, gentlemen, to talk about a movie which has engendered no small amount of controversy, and that is Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And I guess maybe the best way to begin, Johnny, I should throw it to you. And maybe the best way to begin is sort of have you tell us what gave you the idea to put this together. Like, what was the genesis of all this?
Well, I think it was the conversation that you and Askren were originally getting involved in, or maybe it was you and Eric. And there was a real heated debate about it.
Yep.
And the movie was incredibly controversial. There was a lot of negative reactions from some really bad parts of the fandom, and there was some really measured negative reactions. Right. And then there was a lot of awesome just empowerment going on at the same time, bringing new fans to the essentially the Star Wars. I mean, I don't know how better to describe it than just fans to this storytelling element. And I think it just we took the conversation offline because it was getting a little heated, and then we decided at some point that we should actually get on screen or on stream and talk about this. And we're finally getting around to having a little bit of that conversation.
Yes, I am looking forward to that. And yeah, I think what actually was one of the, now that you mention it, I remember that what started it was I actually had posted on Twitter that I had just seen it about maybe 4 or 5 days after it came out. I went with my wife to see it, and I posted that it was an excellent movie, but I didn't understand the amount of vitriol / overwhelming praise that it was getting in a lot of quarters. I actually still feel the same way, that I felt it was good. I just didn't think it was world altering one way or the other. In fact, I think Force Awakens was more significant in a lot of ways, but that was what I felt. And then, yeah, like then all hell broke loose. Like there was a lot of like going back and forth and stuff. And then people like Askren weighed in and other people weighed in. And it's interesting. I had a discussion. I run a comedy podcast called The Mep Report, and which I've been doing for many years. And I do that with two friends of mine, Story and Russ. Story, who is a Star Wars fan, absolutely adored this movie. Was like Rian Johnson, one of the best directors in America. This, cements his place as one of the great storytellers of American cinema. I mean, just on and on and on about how tremendous it was. And he, I would say, he liked Star Wars, but he had some major issues with other things, but he just thought this was just absolutely amazing. Russ, and Russ, I have to say, so Russ is the kind of guy, Russ, who's on the Our Vocalist on my channel, folks here will be familiar with him. So Russ is the kind of guy that he's not usually an extremist exactly. I mean, he doesn't usually come across as like my way or the highway, but he basically was like, so this movie, and this is a guy who was totally completely adored Star Wars in every respect. It had this enormous formative effect. He actually does the Star Wars trading card things, and he loves the whole 9 yards. And he was just like, this is essentially, he's like, I'll see the next movie, but I no longer care about the franchise. That's how bad this movie was. It just annihilated any interest I ever have in watching anything Star Wars again. And I was like, okay, well, that sums up the way I've been feeling, which is that I just watched these incredibly vitriolic, polar opposite reactions, and I don't get it. I don't get why there's this extremity of response to this particular movie. And so I have a lot more to say about that, but I don't want to just keep babbling. So I guess I'll just say, where do you guys in general feel when you first saw the movies, what were your reactions? And then maybe we can get into some more specifics. Eric, when you saw it, were you more my friend Story, or were you more my friend Russ, or where were you on this continuum?
I'm not really on that continuum. If I am, I kind of broke the continuum.
Okay.
In a sort of way. So when I first watched that movie and I left the theater the first time, I was like, okay. I felt very fine about it. I wasn't really concerned. I was like, that was definitely a Star Wars. That was pretty good. It seemed a lot like he was throwing things out, and there was some weird things with the plot, and then it just kind of inceptioned in my brain that night, and I could not let it go. It just marinated. It invaded a little portion of my brain, and my literally my lizard brain down here. I just could not shake it, and it just slowly manifested into thinking more about the movie and what it is. I got to see this movie again. I got to, just period. And I saw it again, and after seeing it again, I was thoroughly convinced that it is one of the best, if not the best, Star Wars movie I've seen. I saw it again for a third time, and then I was like, yeah, I don't want to like make an audacious claim like that until, I was like, hold on, maybe it's hot. Let's give it a month. I'm going to see it again. Saw it again. Sold. Just unbelievable.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at.
Okay, that fits. You do not match, by the way, my friend.
I am a gecko.
My friend Brian Young, who I'll be citing several times during this discussion, who writes for the Huffington Post about Star Wars, runs the Full of Sith podcast, has interviewed all the Star Wars luminaries, has forgotten more than all of us combined will ever know about Star Wars. Like, he named his children Anakin and Scout. Okay, like everything about him is Star Wars. He has seen his movie 17 times. 17 times. He said he has made these incredibly elaborate Twitter defenses that are incredibly impressive and would have been more impressive if they had actually been in the movie and not Brian coming up with things after the fact to explain the movie. But anyway, he adores it. So you're not quite at his level of the number of times you've seen the movie. But man, this is what I'm talking about, like the reactions. But anyway, I'm probably a little more towards your side of the ledger, Eric, but we'll see. So Johnny, same question to you. Like, what was your feeling when you left, and did it change at all over time afterwards, thinking about it, or where are you on this?
So I went in expecting more of the No. Okay. Let me start by answering your question very basically. No, I did not like the film. I walked in expecting one thing and came out seeing something completely different. Now, I will make this, very basic statement that should kind of illustrate where my head is at on the whole thing. It's a very good film. I mean, it's a great adventure story. It's a fun film. It's not a Star Wars movie. And for everything that happened in the story and afterwards, I haven't been able to get myself back to it. I haven't had any desire to go back and watch it again. I haven't wanted to see it again. I have an interesting little history with Star Wars, at how influential it is in the way that I think in my brain, and it hasn't destroyed the franchise for me. I just don't like this movie at all.
Okay. Well, so then talk more about what's the little history? Like, how did it influence you? Because that may have something. I have a theory about how people are reacting and sort of the way that it influenced their childhoods. But anyway, you tell me, how did it influence you?
Well, so I grew up in Los Angeles, and my dad was a projectionist at movie theaters back in the 70s when it came out. And I'm 43. I was 2.5 when the movie came out, and my dad was the projectionist at one of the theaters that ran it for 6 months. My parents were not very, well off, and so we would go visit my dad all the time when he was doing his 12-hour shifts at the theater. Being young parents, they just sat me at the projector window, turned on the little speaker that was over so that they could hear the sound, and I watched Star Wars repeatedly for almost 6 months every time we were in there. Wow. I mean, I would sit and watch it over and over. A good friend of mine described it as it was your Aladdin. It was your Frozen. Yeah. It was the movie that occupied your consciousness for a really long time. And so it influenced me in ways. I mean, I describe it as I got my sense of morality from two films. I got my sense of morality from two things: Star Wars and MASH. I got my sense of good from Star Wars, and I got my sense of what is right and wrong from MASH. But anyways, so that's my history, and so everything, it's been a passionate part of my life, and I don't have really that many problems with the prequels. They're bad, but there are ways to explain around them. I can't explain this. I can't explain why The Last Jedi is just not my thing.
Interesting. Wow, that is a really awesome story, by the way. That's a really cool story.
I could tell you a couple other movies that I used to watch a lot, like Animal House, but then it's like my parents were doing making some bad decisions there.
Because everyone's like, "Wow, what great parents!" Like, okay, maybe that wasn't as great, but
yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this theory that I was talking about, and I think this is why these sort of polls have been created. So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, I just don't feel like the film is that important. And I don't like to sort of create these reactions. So I was like, all right, well, wait, let's be fair, because I am a Star Wars fan, fairly good Star Wars fan. It's close to me as to whether Star Wars or Star Trek is a little bit of a bigger deal, because I'm a huge original series nut of Star Trek, and I teach both Star Trek and Star Wars. But it's very close, and I've played Knights of the Old Republic and won it 1 and 2, and I've played Star Wars the MMO, and I've read the first book of the Thrawn trilogy, and I've seen all of the films, including the prequels. I am not up on Clone Wars and Rebels, and I object strongly to people who think that you need to be able to see those to make things make sense in the movie. Like, no, either the movie works or it doesn't. Should not require, like 5 times of extra like footage, and you know what I'm saying? Like, don't go research everywhere else in the libraries not to make that happen. Or is that nodding in disagreement or agreement?
So I will say that I had a much stronger negative opinion about the prequels until I watched the Clone Wars.
Oh, okay, well,
and because it justified a lot of the things that were going on in the third film.
I see.
I mean, and that's not a great explanation. It's not a great explanation. You're absolutely right. The film should be able to be taken on their own merit.
Right.
The reality is that the people behind Clone Wars did a phenomenal job in explaining why Anakin was pretty much a dumbass in the third film.
Right.
Why he did all the stupid things that he did.
Right. Yeah. I understand that. But like, I think the problem is, as a writer myself, you've got to be able to, as Vacan said, the only movies that should work as a standalone in Star Wars are the standalone movies. If you give me enough time and enough pages and enough ink, I can eventually backfill and explain anything. Like, if you need me to sort of, what makes creative work is when creativity works within the constraints that are established by the medium. And that means you don't get, to me, 25 different bites of the apple. You don't get to continually be like, well, wait, here's this and this and this and this, because then it's essentially like creativity by committee, right? Like, everybody's giving you things they object to, so you fill in and add and adjust and move and things. But then, like, there's something about the event that initially comes out that gets lost. Now, some of that is unavoidable, because as you get more movies in, like a trilogy, the second movie will make things alter about the first movie and the way you understand the third movie. But at least that is one arc story that you would never be able to fit into a single film. So you can't have a 7-hour film for the most part. So you need to split it up. But as far as like the later things where you literally have to do other series where things get filled in, I mean, so I hear you. That's interesting. And I actually will have to see if I can check it out. But anyway, the point is that Star Wars and Star Trek are very close for me. And probably Star Trek is slightly above that a little bit for me, but it's close though. But still, neither one of them, although they're both important to me. So I thought about it. I'm like, well, the one that would fit that for me probably is The Lord of the Rings, because The Lord of the Rings was enormously influential in my childhood. And I read it, 13 times before I was 14. And The Lord of the Rings arguably made a big difference for me in every aspect of my life, including the genre that I choose to write in and so forth. So it was very important to me. And I do remember being extremely nervous walking into the Fellowship of the Ring film, because I thought, if they screw this up, it's just going to suck, because they're not going to do it again for a long time. This is a lot of money and whatever. And then I left feeling with this huge smile on my face, because I thought Peter Jackson nailed it. I thought the films were super well done.
Especially Fellowship, which was the best of the 3. Now, Return of the King is also good. And I think Two Towers, although it has issues, does have some very good moments too. As a trilogy in general, pretty happy with it. Don't get me started on The Hobbit, which was garbage, but whatever, that's later on. Anyway, the point is, for me, those films had this kind of resonance. But even still, I don't know that I would have quite had the reaction of the franchise is going to be annihilated and everything else. And I think it is probably because the film, in an odd way, The Last Jedi seems, I don't know what you guys think, but it feels to me like a film which is doing everything it can to emphasize that it wants everything to be different. And yet it does that while in many ways telling a very similar story to what we saw in The Empire Strikes Back, which it matches in many cases almost beat for beat. The Empire Strikes Back is also about failure. It is riddled with failure. The Empire Strikes Back, the rebels fail, they get driven off a planet, they have to delay things so that they can all escape from the Empire, which is going on to this otherwise barren wasteland of a planet. Does that sound familiar? That happens at the beginning. Luke has to go on this vision quest. Read Rey has to go on this vision quest to be trained by Yoda in Dagobah. He then ends up leaving and going somewhere else when everyone tells him, don't do this because you will destroy all for which they have fought and suffered. He's not really ready to face the supreme bad guy at the time, which is Darth Vader, and so he loses there too. Blah, 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 blah. So Empire Strikes Back, to me, did a lot of that stuff. I think The Last Jedi
is very much driven by the Empire Strikes Back concepts, but it wants to make it seem, and so it like hammers home that it's different. And so there's the whole thing with the 1% stuff with the casino, and there's the whole thing with Luke drinking the blue milk, milking the cow thing on the, and that seems weird to people. And the fact that Luke is a Breton man and everyone doesn't know what that means, and all these things. And so it tries to make a virtue out of difference, when in a lot of ways, I don't actually think it's that different in some ways from a lot of the other movies that exist. So there's this weird tension, for me anyway, between a movie that wants to keep yelling at you that it's different. And I think the problem in Last Jedi for me, although I did like it, the biggest problem in Last Jedi is that it tells you everything and doesn't show you as much as it should. It's like, you will like Holdo because you'll like her because we're telling you to like her, without showing you why to like her, in my opinion. But anyway, so it tells you it wants to be different, and yet it really, underneath the surface, I think, is kind of repeating what Empire Strikes Back did. So,
right. I want to build on that just a little bit, because this is as succinct as I thought about this a lot today coming into this thought, and like, how would I describe what The Last Jedi is about?
Okay.
Right. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because to me, it's if it's a single sentence, it's about legacy, not just failure, but maybe complicated legacy.
Okay.
Because this is the movie to me that's like, Disney just bought Star Wars for $4 billion.
Yep.
They have entrusted this franchise to the younger generation of Hollywood to oversee this complicated history and fandom and all of this cultural attaché, right? Like this juggernaut,
right,
of the complicated pasts and ideas. And that is directly translated into the plot of the trilogy of, surprise, a younger generation of Star Wars characters being trusted with the complicated history and legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, dealing with this thought of like, failure, baggage from the past, what does that mean to go forward? That is literally what Disney is thinking, and that is translated on screen in a way that like is weird. I think if you're not if you're not like, I don't know, like that when that was explained to me, that was kind of like, that kind of blew my mind.
That's interesting, but then wouldn't you see more of this in The Force Awakens? And what I heard from people, leaving aside the alt-right nonsense people that don't like anyone but white males in their films, which I think we can safely dismiss, but besides those people, what I heard, the big criticism I heard of The Force Awakens was they thought that it didn't do enough differently. I don't agree, but they thought it didn't do enough differently. So it feels like Disney owned it before Force Awakens, right? So why did they wait, if that's true, until now to really play out that meta narrative? Do you know what I'm saying? I think probably Johnny could speak to it, but it's definitely a money thing. Listen, okay, I think this is probably the most apt analogy I could ever think of for us. All right, The Force Awakens is D&D 5th edition. You're coming back from a 4th edition that was not publicly acclaimed well, aka the prequels, and you wanted to go back to basics. You wanted to do chicken soup. This is what we all remember, and this is what we like. I am Johnny's age now. I have a kid, and I work at a movie theater, and I want them to have that exact same experience that I had in theater seeing A New Hope. Right? Okay.
Like I want that thing. I want to imitate that feeling as best as possible. So that's why the first one is very close to. It's almost like beat for beat Star Wars.
That's
like the New Hope.
Yeah, you're right.
Compared to The Last Jedi.
So you don't see those same differences. Oh man, my keyboard thing just broke. My children have decided to enter the fray. He's adorable.
Hello, children.
Hi, children.
This is my not quite 2-year-old Kaylin, and this is my daughter Senevine. Both of who are awesome.
Oh.
Yes, hello.
Hi, spawnlings.
So they are both. He is about to head into bed. But that's true. I think you're right that probably The Force Awakens was sort of returning to classic Star Wars. But so you don't see the beats that I do in Last Jedi and Empire, because I feel like they really are playing along the same axis. It seems to me. I don't know. I don't know what you think, but
well, yes, they have to by virtue of being a trilogy, kind of have to pivot inside the same space. They can't move forward. They really have to move laterally. They can't kind of resolve the central themes. All they can do is build out arguments in support of them and sort of flesh out the stakes and what the characters are like. It's more of a characterization development movie for the main characters, which is what Empire is still.
So you guys it's interesting how you're exploring this and talking about it, moving within the framework of essentially there is this established narrative that we're expecting from this trilogy to in some ways mimic the original trilogy, right? One of the issues with the prequels was it told a very different story. It told the fall of Rome versus it telling the American Revolution or any other revolution of any particular type, right? And the places where the new trilogy is telling, the Force Awakens, and then onto it is retreading in a lot of ways, and I do see some of the parallels that Ar was talking about, and I do see some of the differences. I also see some of the parallels of it being sort of a combination of Empire and Jedi in some ways, as it hits so many beats. Just to get all the way to the end of this particular story, it hits so many different beats, almost like it wants to rush to that, so that Episode 9 is this whole completely new thing. The thing that I kept coming back to, I'll be honest. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys about my reaction at the end of the movie coming out. I didn't know what to think. I didn't enjoy myself in the theater. And when I came out, I was with my daughter, who is 21 years old now. She knows I'm a Star Wars fan. She's seen all of the Star Wars films. She's not a huge fan, but even she was like, it's a good movie, but it's not a good Star Wars movie. And the two other friends, and I was ranting, and I was really upset. And I'll tell you why I was upset. I had no problem with a lot of the changes. I had no problem with the way the narrative beats that it told, even though I found the story for the most part boring. The problem I had is its effort to completely just disregard everything that was established in the Force Awakens. It was like, we're going to disregard all of this mystery because we don't need mystery anymore, and anybody can be a Jedi, and there's this and there's that. We're just going to start throwing all this stuff away, right? And the only place where that actually works for any of the characters is Kylo Ren, because he is an amazing and complex character. He's a three-dimensional character, and he lives and breathes in that world. He's a very flawed character, but at the end of the day, that's who he is, right? That's. But everybody else suffered from one-dimensional, trying to expand on that one-dimensional element. And so I was just really upset with the complete disregard for a lot of the things that was attempted to be established, at that beginning, right? At that first episode that was completely, or that first movie, that new movie that was built completely on almost too much nostalgia.
Right.
So,
okay. So I heard you. I'm listening, and I have a couple things that I want to bring up that you have addressed. Okay. So when you mentioned how like the first one I really want to bring up is that you feel like this movie combined some beats of the second and third movie, right? Like this movie's beats sort of subvert a lot of what the old one did. Like, we both recognize that this movie looked at, you can't I'm trying to figure out a way to express it, that we both recognize that this movie looked at the old trilogy and it's like, we can't do the same thing, but like we're gonna hearken to some of it, and by changing it, you see it as like it sort of broke the series and it made it no longer Star Wars. Like it tried to do too much and subvert too much that it's unrecognizable. Right?
I think it missed. I didn't feel like the movie had a heart.
Whoa. Okay. What would it take for the movie to have had a heart?
Okay. When I say that, let me qualify.
Mm-hmm.
The movie didn't have a heart because it tried to be too many things to too many people. Right? The whole basic premise of the saga is to tell the story of one family. Rightly or wrongly, the focus is on that family, right? And they did a phenomenal job in extending that into the new generation with these new characters. and at the same time doing some very different things.
Yeah.
However, they walked that balance really well in Force Awakens.
You
They
see it.
walked off
It's
completely from it
yeah.
in Last
Yes.
Jedi, and that is a
Yes.
problem.
You're like 90% there.
To what?
To what space they're making for the Star Wars. They're breaking down that sort of structure of this is a family matter, and this is becoming, it's like democratization. It's the democratization of Star Wars as a power. It's no longer bloodline and legacy. It is the Force has awoken in everybody. It's no longer emperors, princesses. It is the average person, and is trying to remove those institutions that we recognize in the first one. And like, you see that too, like we all see it, like you see that they're doing it, and you're afraid that it's taking away the ethos, that what makes Star Wars.
I'm not afraid of what I'm not afraid of what it's taking away. I don't have a problem with them changing the narrative, right?
Okay.
I don't have a problem with them expanding on it. There is a huge message in the film that I find interesting, which is that the structure and the strictures of rules that were defined by the previous films are no longer valid, and they've been explored.
They do that,
right? And so they're exploring this in a great deal in the expanded fiction, right? If you're reading some of the books, or you're watching like Rebels. Rebels is a great example of the deconstruction of Star Wars in the same way that The Last Jedi does, except that they are doing it in a way that opens up the possibility without diminishing what already exists, right? They're talking, so there's this great storyline where they're talking about the Bendu, and there are these other elements of the Force, and they come up, and it's like they're complementary to the Jedi. There is this message in The Last Jedi that's like, well, the Jedi are terrible, they were horrible people, and they should go away. No, that's one perspective. That the Jedi's approach was one perspective. There was the Wills, which was another perspective. There is the Bendu, that's another perspective. There are the Night Sisters of Dathomar, that's another perspective. There are so many perspectives of the Force, and none of those threaten. If you're threatened by what the Jedi are, then why are you not threatened by the Sisters of Dathomar? Why are you not threatened by the Bendu? Why are you not threatened by the Wills? I mean, one of my favorite parts of Rogue One was specifically the Guardians, the two guys from the Jedi planet who were there, and who were lost because they're not doing their job anymore, but they represent a different element of the Force. They don't talk about it in that way. They don't say that they've got abilities in the Force, but it's obvious that the Force is influencing them, or potentially, right?
Right.
Last Jedi just basically wants to tear down the temple that is the word and the concept of the Jedi, and I don't understand that.
So I approach this because I don't know anything about the extended universe or the additional things. All I can go off of is what I've seen from the original trilogies, prequels, and movies of the cinema universe. So maybe that's why I don't need that extra knowledge. I don't want to say burden, right? Because that's not the right word. I don't know what the word is, but like, I don't need to have these extra things fleshed out and explained and then also reincorporated. Like, I don't also want to have to read an extended universe book for this thing to make sense to me. I can just look at it and get the picture, because that's what, to me, that's a big thing of what Star Wars tries to do.
Well, let me ask you this, right? So what is your fandom? Like, what is your core fandom? Like, Arv was just talking about the fact that, like, there's Star Trek and Star Wars, and he's more Star Trek than Star Wars, but they're kind of on the same level, right? But he also talked about the Lord of the Rings, right? And so for everybody has some core element of fandom. For some people, it's Harry Potter, right? And the whole controversy over whether Dumbledore is gay, right? And that the whole, whether they're going to explore his relationship in the current Harry Potter films, that's got the fandom up in roars, right? But it's because there are passionate people about it, and because they know so much about what's going on, that they're enthralled in it. For me, that's what Star Wars is I'm enthralled in the bigger story, and I love the bigger story. So Is there? I mean, so is there something that from your perspective, what is your core fandom? What drives you in respect? You have to know everything about that world.
I don't know, but I can only speak about Star Wars right now, and that it's Star Wars. It's probably whatever my fandom is. It's not Star Wars, but I can tell you that Star Wars is not trying to reward people who are super into it right now. It's not trying to do that. It's trying to do the opposite. It's trying to be like, dude, you can like Star Wars as much or as little as you want. It's cool,
right? I'm arguing this from the perspective of. There is this sentiment that, or I shouldn't say I'm arguing. I should say my perspective is coming from the point that there is this sentiment that's coming from the Disney, the Disneyfication of Star Wars, which is that at the end of the day, we don't care about the old. We just want the new. Because the new opens it up and is the wider audience. And so why do we have to disregard the old in order to engender the new, to bring in the new? Why can't we do both?
I have an answer to that. Because capitalism demands that you do it. You can't just re-release the old trilogy again. Right? You bought this for $4 billion. You have to have space, right? Like this is you pushing some things away to make space to create something new.
Okay, so let me step back for a second and say it and present it like this.
Okay,
you've got a new trilogy that you've announced. You've got all of these individual films that you announced. You've got all this expanded universe that you're talking about in respect to the books and the TV series and these comic books and everything else. There is this core storyline that everybody has been following for a long time, right?
Skywalker, right? The story of Skywalker. The
story of Skywalker, the Skywalker family, right?
Yeah.
Whether you think that is what the narrative should be moving forward or not, I get that there is this frustration with nobody cares about blood anymore. Nobody cares about the Jedi anymore. Great. Give that a respectable ending.
Okay.
Walk the line and expand the world, but at the same time, don't forget where you came from. And that's what The Last Jedi does to me, is it forgets a lot of where it came from, because it's as if we have to tear the temple down versus, build around or build next or build something new and make that a part of it. Right. It's this, we have to tear this temple down. And
it's iconoclastic. That's the word you're thinking of, is I think. Right? If I'm listening, it's you have to destroy these symbols for it to make sense. Like, and you disagree with that, and you think it's just that there's a better way of doing it. Well, right?
I think that they could have taken. So okay, so going back to the whole there, we've got all these Star Wars stories, right? So at the end of all of this, Rian Johnson.
Pardon my interruption, real quick. Say word. Arvin, you've been super quiet, dude. Are you cool? I'm
waiting. I'm waiting to jump in. For a second ago, I had to go attend to a child problem. But anyway, I'm back.
Yeah. Jump in, please.
No, I mean, what I was going to say was like, see, part of the concern for me is that the idea of having to tear everything down is partially belied by what I feel like the film plays coy on this. I think that The Force Awakens did it also, but The Force Awakens came by it more honestly, right? The Force Awakens wasn't pretending to me as if it was going to radically alter the way things operated. I think that was saved for The Last Jedi, where it really went off in a new direction. And, well, let me rephrase. It acted like it went off in a new direction, even though I really, as I've said before, don't think it is going off in as new a direction as it thinks it is. I think that The Last Jedi adherents think that it's going in a radically new way, and I don't think it's as radically new as they think it is. No. But leave that aside. But even as it's doing that, it's playing coy because he doesn't actually burn the Jedi books, right? Because we see the books actually in the Millennium Falcon. Right. If Yoda really, really wanted to be like, he has that line, "We are the ones they move beyond," which is a good line and has some power to it. But if that were really true, then if it were really true that we really have to start afresh, then one, you wouldn't have Rey go through this entirely long journey at the end of which she very clearly is the heir to Luke Skywalker's legacy. B, you wouldn't have this epically impressive example of Force using. And I'm sorry, I do part company with the critics of the movie who claim that Luke needed to be in a lightsaber battle to be a badass. If you don't think what he did at the end of that movie is perhaps the greatest single example of Force use ever displayed in the Star Wars, I can't help you. Like that moment is absolutely spectacular. And again, like happens in Return of the Jedi, he wins by not fighting, right? He wins by delaying, but he wins by not being the one who strikes the blow, but letting Kylo overextend himself, which is just what he did to the Emperor. But let me just wrap this up. So the point of all that is that he does all these things, and at the end of all of that, Yoda does this whole business, like, oh, and you got to move beyond it, and you got to burn it down. But he doesn't burn it down. You don't lose the books. Rey isn't a non-Jedi. She doesn't learn from Luke's sacrifice that, oh, I guess I shouldn't be a Jedi and I should just do something new. Far from it. She goes out of her way to be like, I am actually the last Jedi. I am the person who's going to advance things forward. Now we'll see what happens in the final movie as to whether she does anything with that, whether she has there's some redemption with Kylo, whether they're going to start a whole new order. I have no idea. But the movie does not, to me, reflect this idea. If it's pushing, I think it wants to push openly this idea of tear down the past, the Jedi need to die. I think that's what it wants to push, but it's not actually doing that in the movie. And that again is part of that tension to me that I don't know if it totally works, where I feel like the movie is trying to serve several masters at once, and I don't know if it does that adequately in the same way.
That's Kylo Ren's position. That's what he wants to do.
Only if he's the guy who gets to be the new last person standing, though. I mean, he's doing it along an axis of power, right?
Right. So, like, I mean, it's pretty clear when we watch the movie that Kylo and Rey are both stand-ins for the audience, depending on how you view Star Wars. Right?
Okay. Maybe.
Kylo is obviously the person who has read the whole universe, is obsessed with merchandise, while Rey is the newcomer who just loves it just as much as started buying some merchandise, getting into it, and like they represent two sides of the same coin of the fandom, and showing that like it's okay to enjoy this and get touched by the Force, in different ways.
Well, and one thing before Johnny jumps in, and I promise then I'll shut up. One quick thing I just want to say. I do want to distinguish here between the social impact of what these movies are trying to do, because I love the diverse cast. I love the way that they've been reflected. These are also fine actors. I think that they're wasting Finn as a character, but I love the actor, and I think that Rey is done super well. I think Finn's wasted.
Completely wasted.
I think Finn's completely wasted. So wasted. We'll get to this in a minute. We'll get to this in a minute. I think he's totally wasted. But anyway, so I think Daisy Ridley is tremendous as Rey. Tremendous. I think Rey is tremendous. In fact, I think the entire Jedi subplot of The Last Jedi was awesome. Like, I actually loved it. It was the problem I had was with the casino scene, which I thought was a waste, and the Poe Heldo stuff. I'm not so sure about.
That's why you guys think Finn is.
Anyway, yeah. So we'll come back to that. But the point is that I do want us to distinguish between the social importance of doing something new. And I think that what the movie is trying to socially do that is new is extraordinarily important, right, on one side. And on the other side, what the movie is artistically claiming that it's trying to do, which I don't really think it's doing. There is an artistic side of things that it's doing, which it says is new, and I don't think is. And then there's a social thing which it's doing, which is new and should be new, and they're doing a great job there. So on the social side of things, that is way overdue. I'm glad they're doing it. But I think we want to distinguish that from, because they are tearing down the past in that way, and they should keep tearing, like, as far as I'm concerned. But as far as the artistic side of things, that's the concern I have about whether they really should be doing what they do. Also, thanks for the host star called.
It's familiarly iconoclastic. Yes, absolutely.
So, Eric, you just pointed out something that I think is really hits one of my issues with the goals of what Disney's doing. And it's because of the way that you phrased it from the political message, right?
That anyone can be in the Force? That the movie's accessible for everybody?
No, it's not the fact that it's accessible. In fact, you
don't have to be a Skywalker.
It's
what part?
It's the Kylo Ren versus Rey thing. You know, they represent two sides of the audience, right? They represent the two ends of the audience, and you're somewhere in between based on the rest of the characters, right?
They're absolutely foils for one another, which I can explain also. But continue.
Why do we need that message in the story? Why do we need that So I'm not saying we don't need that representation for kids to get involved, right? I love everything. I love everything that they did. with bringing in Rey and Finn and Poe. Poe wasn't used well enough in the first movie. He was an incredibly one-dimensional character, but he was fun as hell. I loved who Poe was. Finn was probably the most complex character in The Force Awakens because of his motivations, right? He was confused. He was different. He was conflicted in the same way that Kylo was, except that Kylo wasn't as strong as he was in Last Jedi. I think that Kylo did an amazing job. They did an amazing job of developing his character. But you've got all this stuff, right? You've got all this amazing new story that they're building on the foundation of what was previous. Why then? Why then do we have to go from that to we have to make sure that somebody identifies with this character versus this character, which is is what it feels like. It's very forced in a lot.
Okay, right. Well, that's because the opposite. If you didn't do that, you can't just have Luke, Han, and Leia and make movies till eternity, right? No. You have to have new characters, right?
That's not what I'm implying.
Then what are you?
That's not what I'm getting at.
Then, but you have to have.
You do have to do new characters, and I love the new characters.
Okay.
I thought that Force Awakens was amazing for the way that they established that.
Okay, so we agree you have to have new characters.
You absolutely.
Yes.
We had new characters.
Absolutely,
we had new characters
you do.
in the previous.
Okay.
Cool. In the prequels, right? Yeah, we had new characters in. We have all of these things, right? Why do they have to be forced? Why do they have to be shoehorned into stereotypes then? Because what you're talking about is that these nuanced characters that they're trying to develop are all of a sudden shoehorned into. This is for this particular person to identify with. This is for this particular person to identify with. This is for this particular person to identify with. In a lot of ways, and I loved the Rose character, but in a lot of ways, I felt she was a checkbox on the diversity versus being a real character.
No, okay, so this is why it's more once again the democratization of power in the Star Wars universe. Okay, it is the disassembling of only Skywalkers are Jedi Force wielders. Okay, it is the dissolution of that institution of the Star Wars franchise. They're doing that to make space to make more movies going forward. So like that is a concession that they have to make. That in order to, they don't want to continue doing that. They want to make it so Star Wars can be new. It can have new space to grow in a way that new characters can emerge that aren't just like second cousins or somebody of this bloodline. They want it to so that there is this resurgence of the Force cosmically for that anybody can. It's a message that anyone
I agree with
can reach out and maybe be a Force user.
Eric, I agree with this in part, but does this all have to be done in movie 8? Because it feels to me like what you're suggesting is that this democratization can't take place over the course of several movies, but has to take place in one fell elbow drop to the canvas of democratization now. I mean,
this is the start. This is just the start. I think 9's going to be the coup de grace of it.
You think 9 is going to do this time more? Like you think?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The end of it absolutely points to that with the kid. Like
yes, well, I like the kid part, but then
Luke,
I hated the kid part.
I
thought that was cheap
with the broom.
It started.
It was cheap,
dude. Okay, it started with Rey. Okay, so first off, Luke is the hero of this movie. Period.
No, he's not. But okay.
What is the story that the kids are telling that they get in trouble in the stables? Is it Rey moving a bunch of rocks, or is it Luke standing in front of the entire First Order?
Yeah, I see. Okay, here's the thing about that. But this is again where I think there's a duality going on here. Okay, I agree with you that I actually think you're right in a way. That Luke, I don't know that he's the hero of the movie, but I think that he is the symbol represented by the movie. But that exactly is the point. If you're going to make an argument that the movie is intended to be a democratizing force that pulls you away from Skywalker, you cannot simultaneously then create a movie in which the entire symbol is Skywalker and pretend that you're doing something like, again, that's really having your cake and trying to eat it too. And I think that's the difference between the balance that The Force Awakens strikes and what this movie is, which again, in my mind, is trying to serve two masters. And it doesn't need to do it that fast. It doesn't need to do it that quickly.
Completely agree,
in my view.
But it is trying to be familiarly iconoclastic. It's trying to wean you off of the old guard to create space, and this is I think going to be the last movie where the old guard plays a major role in the way that when I say like Luke, I mean obviously two of them are gone now, and unfortunately Carrie is no longer with us.
Hey, we haven't heard from Lobot yet. Okay, until Lobot leaves the scene.
But I'm sorry, I'm personally waiting for Lando Calrissian. Thank you guys.
Yeah, hey, listen,
God,
that's fine.
I want Lando.
Lando is not the real power behind the throne. That was all Lobot.
Right, exactly. Right. Speaking of, before I forget, Solo, Donald Glover looks amazing as Lando.
Holy shit! I know. Oh my god. God.
But so here's the thing. Here's
biggest
the thing
crush. Holy shit, that's my life goal.
Seriously. So the thing about the whole, having to break it down. Why now? What they start? So I'll tell you. No,
Sure.
let me.
Okay. Continue.
Rogue One does a phenomenal job in selling the fact that Star Wars can tell a story. Now, granted, it tells a story within the framework of the original trilogies, right, or before the original trilogy, but it tells a story that has nothing to do with any of the core players until the end. And at the end, we see Darth Vader doing his thing, and then we get a moment of Princess Leia, and that is done. Everything else is built on the framework that we can tell larger stories and we can tell smaller stories in this world without touching the core elements of what the original trilogy was, which is the Han, Luke, and Leia trio, right. Which is the struggle of good versus evil. There's the evil empire and the rebellion, right? We can tell a story within that without having to disrupt any of the core tenet of the story. And in fact, Matt Covell does a really good job in explaining why it's actually frustrating in the context of Rogue One into New Hope. While there's some problems there, but out of that element, at the end of the day, we're getting that, and we're getting that again with Solo. And eventually, we will get completely new stories that don't touch anything that has to do with Han Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker. Right? We'll get entirely new stories. I'm personally hoping for an Old Republic story, but we'll get something.
Right.
Yeah, but nostalgia sells, man.
Why does it have? You're right. It absolutely does. But why does it have to deconstruct in the middle of the finishing chapter of a story? Right? Because this is a three act thing.
Because it gets people in seats, my dude.
So it didn't though, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Like the movie bombed in some places. It wasn't as iconic plastic as you were expecting.
Whoa,
right?
well,
a little strong.
The Last Jedi bombed.
I wouldn't say bomb.
No,
I mean, it's still not a bomb.
It bombed in Asia.
A couple $100 billion is not a bomb.
Still not bomb. I mean, I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean about the drop off, but it's not. But that's not.
Okay, well, wait a minute. When major Hollywood studios make decisions based on the China market, on the market inside of China, because that's more than 1 billion people that they're. I mean, when you see box office failures, like what was that Matt Damon film that they co-produced with some Chinese company? It was supposed to be this big affair, and then people were complaining. There was this whole uproar about why is Matt Damon the star of this film that's set in China about all this right. Chinese mythology. Well, it's because Matt Damon was the largest selling actor in China at the time, right? This is a huge market where there's a huge concessions and considerations going on, and yet they didn't like it. Most of Asia didn't like it. There's this disregard in some ways when you talk about it from a money perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's I think that it's maybe overselling a little bit. I don't think it's a complete full out collapse. But I mean, I agree with you that it did have some concerns in China. But I mean, I don't know.
But the box office, so the box office returns weren't happening there as well because the fanboys weren't going out for it. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
the merchandising wasn't going off because, and I'm not suggesting that you settle the fanboys.
No, right.
I'm suggesting that you're completely disregarding them in order to build on the new. And I understand the argument for capitalism. At the end of the day, they're doing that already. They've got these additional Star Wars films. They've got this additional properties. They've got the Rebels TV show, which is about to end, and they've got another one that's coming up after that. Right?
I mean,
they're doing a great job in building and expanding their audience base. Why disregard the old?
One day they're going to run out of nostalgia to mine. They have to begin to This is like a new alternate energy source that they have to begin. Of course, the return's not going to be as big. You're pushing people out of their comfort zone.
I am not disregarding that they're going to have to change. Look at what Marvel's running into. Marvel is about to end all of their current run, and they're going to have to start over in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah. Good luck with that. I don't want to be there. Good luck.
But see, they're doing it in a way that's a smooth transition. It's a much smoother, right?
Yeah.
In Star Wars, it's catastrophic. It's iconoclastic. It's we're going to change this right now because we can. Versus let's respect the old, let's get done, let's bring in the new, let's get it done, and then we can start to tell new stories without the weight of all of this crap, right? They've already talked about the fact that Rian Johnson has a new trilogy. He's going to tell a new set of stories that have absolutely nothing to do with the Skywalkers and absolutely nothing to do with the galactic conflict.
Cool.
He is going to tell something completely new in the Star Wars universe.
Surprising to me that which shows that they trusted what he was going to do. It surprises me a little bit then that they couldn't have just given him that trilogy without sort of inserting him in the middle of a J.J. Abrams bracket, because it would be interesting to see how, because I mean J.J. is on record as saying he wishes he had been directed this film
totally
because he liked the script. But I have to say that I think all of these things are true, but I think that some of the stuff that happens here is because the film has. The film has some issues that I think sort of get in the way of doing these things, even just on the basis of just leave us, it's a good science fiction film. Yes, but there are pacing problems. And there are issues with the film that are separate even from the larger Star Wars concerns. Like, I think personally, and this gives us a chance to get into this a bit, I think the film is about a half hour too long. And I think the film is about a half hour too long, which coincidentally is exactly the length of time of the casino scene, which is a, in my opinion, bolted on combination of wasted opportunities. It wastes opportunities with Finn. It wastes opportunities with Benicio del Toro, because why bother to use this guy in a role that really matters? Instead, let's make him into a stutterer and have him in a jail to show up to do this stuff. And it does so in the service of the following lesson, which I've heard from multiple sources, which is that the reason you send Finn there is not just about failure, it's about learning about the hidden cost of the wars that you fight. The fact that the 1%ers are the ones who are in charge down there. The fact that the poor are servicing the rich. You use the binoculars to zoom in, look at the people whipping the animals, blah, 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 blah. This is what we fight for. That message, which I think in general is a good and reasonable message to maintain, but that message is not upheld to me by taking an engineer who we have never met before, who happens to just randomly be down there on the deck, putting her together with Finn, who, remember, is not leaving because he's a coward, which is the way that it gets played out, but is leaving because he wants to save his friend Rey from going back to what he views as certain death. And it really pisses me off that people's reactions is like, oh, Rose has every right to do this because Finn is running away. No, he's not running away. He goes out of his way to do that. So all those things, right? And all of
You're
that
so close.
In service of this. No, but it's all of this in service of going to this planet to find a master code breaker, the plot for which you promptly abandon upon discovering a stuttering Benicio del Toro in a jail cell, and decide that because he gets you out of a jail cell, perfectly reasonable to put all of our attention and effort and belief about the future of the resistance into the hands of this one dude. It is mind-bogglingly, to me, off-center. It is a waste of time, and it literally has nothing to do with the plot. You could take that away, and you could literally have the ships going forward and doing what they do, and it has no effect on the plot at all. And instead what we get, even when Finn gets to face the big bad, he gets his big moment, he faces Phasma, and then he's like, I'm rebel scum, or whatever the hell he says, and he's like, I'm a badass, and I'm this. That's awesome. And Phasma has nothing to do with anybody else. Phasma is destroyed by Finn. No one else is there to help with it. It's just Finn doing Finn. And then he comes back and I'm like, this would have been great if you had your own movie called Finn. What are you doing in this movie? He has no effect on it. And I don't understand why you would take what to me was one of the more interesting premises of a character from the Force Awakens, this stormtrooper who escapes and leaves because he doesn't want to be dictated by his genetics, by the fact that he was taken away when he was a child, and just make him into this guy whose job it is to wander around and either follow after Poe or follow after Rey or follow after Rose, and there he is just sort of sitting around. What is all that? And so
I will explain it. I can tell you.
All right,
unless that's a rhetorical question. I will tell you.
Tell me.
I will tell you. So, all right. Look, that movie's plot is problematic. Guess what? I just watched Empire Strikes Back. That plot's pretty problematic. It's pretty slow. Dagobah's pretty slow. You watch a Muppet rummage through a bunch of trash and eating some dude's snacks for about 20 minutes. It's real boring.
Totally compelling.
It's
totally disagree.
All right, but anyways, let me talk about Finn. Okay. I gotta get into it.
Tell me about Finn.
So I actually have a list of all the main characters. The reason why you think it's so long is because there's fucking 7 main characters, and each of those goes through a journey of rationalizing what their legacies are and their own personal baggage with the past and rectifying going forward. And you somehow have to solve that in 2 hours, which is like, that's why it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. So let's talk about Finn now. I'll do exclusively Finn so we don't get bogged down. Finn is dealing with the legacy, as you brought up, of being a victim of the Galactic War, right? Becoming a stormtrooper in it and trying to, A, get out of it for selfish reasons or just self-centered reasons to only help their friends. If this was D&D, you're the perfectly neutral character. It's saying, fuck this Hegelian good versus evil, like capital G, capital E force that's going on here. I want mine. I want to hide under that blanket of neutrality, of individualism, right? I just want to be with my group, my people, and screw it. This whole movie is basically like the plot is just a vehicle for characterization to go through all of this, right? And so if Finn was a D&D character and like that was his belief, or he was a Burning Wheel character and that was his belief, Ryan, the director, goes, "Oh yeah, that's what you believe? Okay. Well, here's what's going to happen when you try to go save your friend. You're going to be exposed to what someone else who also says, fuck it, it's all the same to me. I don't care. Here's what's the difference here?" And the entire point of Canto Blight is to get him to actually join the rebellion. It's to get him to no longer be an independent neutral. He's going from neutral to good, that entire process. He has some good tendencies. He wants to help out people when he can. He doesn't want to be a dick. But like at the same time, he's also like, this isn't my fight. I don't want to be here. The entire Force Awakens, he doesn't want to be there. He's like, fuck this. I don't want to be like, literally, he's like, why you keep going back to Jakku? You guys are fucking nuts. Let's get out of here. The entire time, the whole movie, he's doing this.
I agree with this. I want to ask you a question, Eric. I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Han doesn't want to be, and you'll go, I'll let you get, believe me, I'll let you play time with Finn. Yeah. Han doesn't want to be there. This isn't his fight. What is it that draws Han back into the rebellion to become a rebel? Right.
Leia.
And Leia is fundamental to the main plot. So why is it that Finn has to be sent on a side quest instead of being incorporated into the main plot to learn exactly what you processed, exactly what you described? Why do we need to send him for a half hour in D&D terms while all the other party members sit around twiddling their thumbs because there's nothing to do? We know as dungeon masters, this is terrible game running, right? You don't run a game where you have 45 minutes with one person and everyone else just sits there wondering, what do I have to do with it? You have minutes where there's character development, but everyone knows that what happens to this character will directly impact them on the plot level. So they have to be ready to jump back in at any moment. Right. This is the side plot of this is DLC.
Right.
This is Canto Blight DLC for The Last Jedi.
Sure. But so Finn's story doesn't end there. Okay. So Finn's story, the first crucible that Finn faces in this movie is seeing Canto Blight and realizing that these effects have costs, and realizing that self-centered individualism isn't going to do a lot. It's just going to keep perpetuating this pain, and that he can't have that on his conscience. So what he does, and then he first shows it when he has the chance, when he says to whatever her name is, Phrasma.
Chrome Dome.
I don't remember their name. Yeah, right. It doesn't matter. Anyway, she says, "You're scum," and he says, "Rebel scum." That is the point when he checks off that belief, gets that experience, being like, "I'm no longer a self-centered individual. I belong to the other team."
Go ahead, VSC.
Yeah, what's up?
You just said something that struck me as to exactly the problem with it. It was a checkbox that he checked off.
Sure.
That's not good storytelling. It's not good storytelling to go from, I've got this sequence of events. Yes, telling a good story is progression. It is character
counterpoint. Sorry, I have to
Okay, go ahead.
Counterpoint. The entire New Hope is the hero's journey. Checkbox. There's 13 checkboxes or 12 checkpoints you can check off.
It is, but it's not so. So here's the thing about that, right? It wasn't so obvious then. It also wasn't obvious to Lucas when he wrote it. There are so many elements of the story of Star Wars, A New Hope, that came together in post-production It came together in editing, right? There is a reason that. So at the end of Star Wars, the Death Star appears, in New Hope, it appears, in front of Yavin, right? And it wasn't going to destroy Yavin. The Rebel ships just sort of come out and they destroy the Death Star. It wasn't going to make its attack. There wasn't an impending threat. That short part of the story got added by the editor, Lucas's wife, at the end of the day when she looked at this and said, "This is a shit story. This is a shit ending. They look like bad guys." So she changed it, right? But that wasn't like some checkbox that she was going for. She looked at the narrative and said, "This sucks. Let's fix this. Finn's story sucks in Last Jedi. Fix it. Make it better. Don't checkbox it. Make it better. Make it more impactful."
I agree, and I'll add something else too. Go ahead. You'll go ahead, Eric.
It's just I didn't get to the last part.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right,
Finn, that's not the end of Finn's storyline.
Okay.
Finn goes from, okay, I am now part of the rebellion, full stand. We go to the Battle of the Salt Mine. I forget the name of the planet. I don't care. Crate.
Hoth.
It's called Crate. Crate. No, it's called Crate. So the Battle of Crate, he does what Poe does at the beginning of the movie. His cycle ends where Poe's story begins. Finn's story ends. His hero level of what he believes is the starting belief of Poe. Is that, fuck it, if I'm gonna be a hero, I can fucking save the day.
Okay, but so that's an interesting argument. But here's the problem, though. Good writing, okay, and good storytelling, and frankly, good DM. Well, let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Good storytelling, good writing, and good DMing means that one thing serves for many. One checkbox fills out multiple avenues, multiple checks. When Han comes in to rescue Luke, it is not only addressing Han's character, it is addressing Leia's understanding of Han. It is addressing Luke's character, because Luke understands something different about how people can change and seem to be mercenary and not be in the end, and that he and Leia played a role in that. When Finn changes, the only witness to this change, at least the initial part of the change, is Rose, and the second person who's a witness to it is the person that's yelling at him angrily to veer off so that he doesn't hit the gun, which is Poe. Yeah. But he doesn't come out of that. We don't get a moment where Poe says to Finn, "I think you were where I was," or "I see now, seeing from the outside what you were, something different." We don't get any of that. In fact, Poe doesn't really interact with Finn at all. The only interaction we get are, again, between the two characters who have been, again, forced together from the beginning, which is Rose and Finn. And this is an example of a problem that I had with The Last Jedi from the very beginning, is that it tells us to feel these things. It doesn't show us how. It tells us you will like Rose and Finn together because you will like them because they are different characters and they work together differently, and you will like them because you will like them. And I ask why, and they say, "Shut up, you will like them." It doesn't give me any reason to tie them in with everybody else. It doesn't give me any reason they literally abandon the plot, literally, and go off in a ship to go elsewhere, with most of the people in the Resistance having no idea they're doing this except for Poe, whose knowledge of that does very little to address the main plot or affect the main plot at all. And when they return, we don't get a lot of information from Poe, who has been altered by Finn's journey either. So it's Finn going to figure out Finn, a checkbox for Finn. It's a single one character beat that has no impact on the other plot, and that is bad story writing. Imagine what it was like if Han, to learn that he should join Luke and join the rebels, had to go to another planet, deal with Jabba, do a whole bunch of other stuff, and then realize, you know what, I really should be a rebel and come back, adding an hour plus time to the movie and having nothing whatsoever to do with the movie, instead of thinking about what Luke had done, what Leia had done, the way they had worked together, and coming in out of the sky to help with the Death Star. That later example are plots working together. This example are parallel plots being placed into a movie and asking it to contain all of them at once. Parallel plot is not as good as integrated plot, and I just don't think this movie integrated those plots together in that same way.
Right. Okay. I look, man, I'm not going to defend plot in this movie, because I don't think this movie's plot is very good. I see its plot as a vehicle for the characterization. It puts these characters in these situations to question their beliefs. That's it.
Hold on a second.
It's a characterization movie, not a plot movie.
Bullshit. That's
so I think the scenarios are contrived.
I think
that's totally anti-Star Wars. Everything about Star Wars is about the story, is about the emotional experience. It's the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey is, yes, a series of checkboxes that you can add if you want to tell a particular story and you want it to be familiar to people. But at the end of the day, it's still a story. It's still a narrative. It still has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And one of the biggest problems of this movie is it doesn't have a beginning and a middle and an end. It has a middle. And you
a bunch of middles,
the characters end at the middle. They never get, and that's part of the basic problem that I have with this is that it doesn't tell me a compelling story. I was bored throughout.
Neither does Empire.
I totally disagree. I think you're badly.
Dude, I just watched Empire today.
I'm sorry, man. I think you're badly misinterpreting that. The Yoda rummaging around and doing all these things is absolutely oriented with the main plot, because at that moment, the most important thing that's going to happen in that movie is what happens to Luke. Quite honestly, what happens to Finn is not that important to anything else in The Last Jedi. And you know how I know? Because he doesn't do anything else in The Last Jedi except have his own self-contained story. Whereas Luke is fundamentally important to the rebellion, to Leia, to Han, to Lando, to all the stuff that happens on Cloud City, and important to Yoda and, oh, by the way, Kenobi. So Luke's story affects everybody. Finn's story affects no one but himself. So I agree with you that there is something to be said for the idea that there's character. I'm not saying Empire Strikes Back moves. Trust me, I don't need a fast-paced movie. What I need is a movie with narrative push that goes somewhere for a reason. There is wasted space in The Last Jedi that does not exist in the Empire, because those slow moments in Empire are moving forward the central plot, because without Luke, there is no story. Without Finn, though, there is a story, and that's a shame, because I feel like Finn should be a bigger part of it. And in fact, I think Force Awakens was setting up for Finn to be able to be a bigger part of it, until they're like, do you know that the original version of The Last Jedi had that story with them going off to Canto Blight with Poe, and it was going to be Poe and Finn? And the reason Rian Johnson is on record as saying the reason he didn't do that is because it was, quote, boring. The problem is the boring part was not Poe. The boring part was the plot. The boring part was the story. It wasn't Poe. And that's the thing. It was a misunderstanding of what we need to do is add Rose to make it interesting. No, what you needed to do is get rid of it and make Finn, give him something to do in the main plot. That's what you needed to do. I have no objection to adding these other characters. I think it's a good idea to add these other characters. But for Christ's sake, give them something to do. Don't have them send off on this wandering motion and go, okay, audience, put your attention to the side while the ships continue to wander away from the First Order. Now let's talk about a casino. What? Like, it's the definition of a side quest. It is.
So, but I'm going to have the counter argument that having I disagree with the idea that everything must be neatly tied together in a movie, though.
No, I disagree
with the premise,
but it needs to be interlocked at some level. That's all.
I mean, you're dealing with 7 storylines, and like you want them all to like neatly knit together.
Not at the end of that movie. I like them to cross at some point. Could they intersect somewhere? They don't. They literally go off though.
They intersect with Finn's in a big way.
So here's the problem I have with the argument that the reason that the movie is so long and it's so scattered is because they've got 7 characters and they need to tell these competing stories and bring them together. I have seen movies that do it in 90 minutes. I have seen one of my favorite examples, Reservoir Dogs. In about an hour and 40 minutes, you get 7 distinct characters who cross in different paths. Now, the storytelling mechanisms that they use, the editing that they use, all help convey that story, but they're still able to tell that story in a fashion, right? If you want a more linear example, look at the way that Joss Whedon used the original Avengers film. It's not a great film. It's not a good film by any means in a lot of ways, but what it does is it's pretty good. Compelling story of 6 individual characters coming together and doing some crazy awesome stuff. It gives them give each character enough weight to be able to convey what's going on in their plot point, in their subplot, and then bringing them back together.
Whose development affects each other's development too, by the way, on top of it. So
yes.
But Quentin Tarantino has different tools. You are bound by Star Wars to only use the language of fights, chase scenes, quippy jokes. That's to tell to convey a story.
Hold on a second.
That's all you can use.
That was also one of my biggest problems with The Last Jedi is that it had too many jokes. The jokes did not have.
Go back. Oh my God, watch it. Watch The Empire. Holy shit, C-3PO just ruins everything. Oh my God.
No. Hold on.
Do it. Okay.
The reason
I challenge everybody. Do it.
The great thing about Empire Strikes Back, the great thing about Star Wars, right? The original New Hope right? The reason the jokes work is because they're told at a moment, they hit at a plot point where it's gallows humor, it's dark, and so they need a moment of like a little bit of ease, a little bit of comedy in the tragedy that's going on and the intensity of what's going on. The jokes in The Last Jedi felt like they were just jokes to be jokes, in a la the vein of like a Marvel film. And Marvel films, while I enjoy the hell out of them, they have too many jokes in them and they don't always take themselves seriously, but that's become the charm of what a Marvel film is, right? Like Ragnarok, great film, too many jokes.
Well, I mean, I'm neutral
fine with the humor.
I'm neutral on the part of the. I mean, I'm kind of neutral on the part of the jokes, because I agree that the joke. I mean, look, there has never been brilliant joke telling or dialogue giving in any of the Star Wars films. Okay, they're not models of dialogue consistency, but Star Wars is at its best, in my view, when it undersells its dialogue, not oversells it. For example, and that's one of the reasons why Empire is widely considered to be the best of those, for at least the original trilogy, because it undersells dialogue. Because those wonderful moments of Master, I don't believe it. That is why you fail. It's a wonderfully undersold whole, because it is not just, well, you don't have enough faith. It's that you don't believe the evidence of your eyes. Like I just showed you, I lifted that thing from the swamp, pulled it over there. And by the way, if you want epic, we want to talk about narrative push for just a minute. Quick sidebar, narrative push for just a minute. Listen to the music when that ship is descending and tell me you don't get chills. It is absolutely stunningly done. And it is literally just a ship that goes, I don't know, 500 feet from one side to the other. So anyway, I just love that moment. But so then he does
it's
that.
fucking awesome.
And then Yoda looks at him and says this thing. He just sort of opens his eyes and Luke says, Master, I don't believe it. That is why you fail. And that moment is enormously powerful when Yoda says things, remember your failure at the cave. Even the fact that you don't know that he's the Jedi Master when you first encounter him. All of that is an example of wonderfully underselling the dialogue to make it have this really powerful impact. So, and I feel like when it's sort of doing goofy stuff like it does in Star Wars and some Return of the Jedi in those cases, it's not as strong. This Last Jedi does do a lot of jokes like that. I'm not wild about the Hux joke at the beginning, although mostly it's just because I don't like Hux. But that wasn't a big deal to me. But I do have to say that it is another example. It seems, again, like another ancillary thing. Like, we need humor. Wablam, have a bunch of jokes. Like, scatter in jokes, as opposed to things that are coming from the moments of the movie. So it's not organic, it feels like to me.
Okay, so two things on that real quick, because I want to speed through this. Okay, so the first one, I love that fucking part with Luke, by the way, in Empire. Like, for sure. So absolutely. It's brilliant. And then it's completely... listen to the dialogue when Luke's getting ready to leave and getting in the X-Wing when Obi-Wan shows up as a Force ghost and they're sitting there. He's like, dude, don't go. I want to go. Don't go, though. It's bad. Complete your training. You're not ready. I'm going to go, though.
Right.
But don't go. And that's it. Like, that's literally it's not good. Right. So it's not good.
Hold on a second. I can't. So there's something about that scene that you're not conveying, right? It's the emotional weight that is going from the non-verbal acting that's going on. Right, their facial expressions, their body language, the way that the shot is framed, the music is not there at all. So all we have is the dialogue and what the actors are doing, evoking in respect to their emotional responses. There is some pretty strong stuff going on there. It falls flat when you describe it like that, but in the moment with everything else, the weight of that decision-making process is huge. And if you're not carried along with the rest of the story, then it's not going to make, it's not going to feel important. But it is the most, that decision is the most important element of that movie. Because of what happens if Luke doesn't leave.
The same argument could be made about the dialogue of The Last Jedi, though.
Yeah, but see, the thing about The Last Jedi, but again, it doesn't lead to these moments that are not only profound within themselves, but impact plot. This is what I mean about one thing doing many things. The best line of that last scene when he leaves is the scene the line we didn't talk about, which is where he says, that boy is our last hope, and Yoda says, no, there is another. And you're like, what? And you're like,
cut to
holy
Leia.
crap.
Yeah.
Like that, first of all, that's a beautifully sort of understated line for the scene itself. It also gives you all kinds of plot plot benefits where you're like, whoa, what does this mean? Like, and it's not a line that you throw out there and don't follow through on. You do follow through on it later. Whereas a lot of The Last Jedi, it felt to me the lines just stayed there and were static. Again, it's like the characters. Characters exist in some cases just to serve themselves, not to serve the overall movie. Jokes in The Last Jedi often are there to serve themselves, not to serve the overall movie. What plot development does the beginning opening sequence with Hux, other than to remind us that Hux is an incredibly dumb character that has no impact on anybody? What exactly what does that do, that whole Poe, like joking back and forth with him? Sure. What does it do for us? How do we come out of it feeling like, now I see that Poe is really, really funny and roguish? Like, we already knew that about him, right?
Go back and watch. Go back and watch the first 5 minutes of The Force Awakens. Do it. Well, guess what? Note the first thing he does when he gets captured by Kylo Ren. He looks at him. He's like, "Dude, I can't understand. You gotta take that mask off." I think there's the apparatus. I don't know. Like, he's doing the exact same thing.
Right, but it works in that scene because it up until that point, he is the soldier. He is the hero who is in the situation, and he is doing exactly what he needs to do. In this particular situation,
I just want to quote you. Oh, just so good.
It just shows how cocky he is at the beginning of The Last Jedi. And granted, that's what sells everything about his plot line, which is terrible in my opinion, but it's what it sells his plot line, throughout the entire film. But that's all it is cocky. We don't see any of that confident. We don't see any of that hero. All we see is that, whatever. I'm gonna fuck with him. I'm gonna mess with him until we get into position, and then he doesn't do anything else. And then that whole power slide thing with the X-Wing. Now, granted, that was kind of cool, but
it looks
at the
cool.
same time, it's like,
and Miranda just hit it.
Really?
Miranda just hit it, by the way. That's the thing. Maybe they're reintroducing the character for people who haven't watched Force Awakens. Maybe. Yeah. Why? Isn't Poe already established as cocky, arrogant, the new Han Solo? Do we get all of this? Why do we need to go back to it and be like, no, really, forget about Force Awakens. Again, really roguish, arrogant. We already got it. Like, he's arrogant and roguish. We get it.
Right. So Sure. Like, he's cocksure. He's your World War I fighter ace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's doing this, right? Yeah. He's your wings stand-in.
Yeah.
But so Poe has to grapple in this movie with the legacy of being a hero is not enough to win the war, right? And to tie back into what Luke knows and what Rose knows is that you have to. It's not about fighting what you hate. It's saving what you love. And he's fighting what he hates, and he's sacrificing for it. And he has to learn that lesson in that first scene. That is the first part where he's like, what the fuck? But I just won. I don't care about those numbers. I win. I can do this, right? And his arc is evolving past that, right? His whole arc. Okay, so the whole convoluted, why doesn't she just tell him the story about the cloak transporters and shit? Sure, it's convoluted, but once again, I view the movie as the plot there is a vehicle to challenge characters' beliefs. So, sure. Once again, I have that concession. That's where I'm from. That's why I enjoy the movie. But so when Poe goes through this whole thing and does that and comes out the other end realizing that these things do have costs, because now Finn's driving right into the Death Star bomb thing, and he's like, dude, you have to back out. That is his arc changing, where he's like, he has just evolved out of his arc while Finn is going right into that gear. And he's like, nah, dude, I've seen this. I literally was you, because you are so full of that heroic spark, that cocksureness. Like, nah, dude, I'm a fucking rebel. Let's do this. I'm ready.
But then Eric, but then why
that is
what you've just described is real. That's smart. But then
so
why
compelling.
don't we get? But we don't. The thing is, here's the thing. We don't.
I don't know.
Get
I got it watching the movie.
But where does Poe tell? Where do we get any conversation between Poe and Finn that indicates any of what you've just described as coming through to Finn? I don't see it.
It doesn't.
But
it doesn't come to Finn. Just how what's her name, purple hair, does not get through to Poe. Yeah. It's the same cycle.
Yeah, and I know that
you're watching these cycles go down of the people we have martyrs.
We have to start moving to wrap this up because unfortunately we can't get into Holdo as much as I'd like to, because I know Johnny's got to get moving.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I honestly think this is long. This conversation could go on for hours and hours and hours.
I would love to, dude. I would love to get old fashions and just talk about this all night, dude.
In fact, I would like to suggest that we find a way to continue this conversation in some way, because I think that there are things that we haven't even touched on. Like, we didn't even touch on the meta narrative that's coming from really what Disney is doing here, and we didn't touch on other elements of
Holdo and mostly
exactly
right.
Yeah, and I just want to say Benito del Toro's character was my favorite part of the movie. and he was
So
only in it for like
wasted.
5
So
minutes.
wasted.
He was wasted. He was completely wasted. But he was 5 minutes of the movie, and you know what? He was the most Star Wars character in that film.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long tradition of bringing in awesome characters like Darth Maul and then killing him off before you get to know anything about him. It's like, This is great. I'm like, oh, God. Qui-Gon, no, goodbye. All right. Anyway, yes, I agree with that. I guess the question I would ask chat, because we need to let Johnny go and do his thing on Blades in the Dark. But chat, would you be interested in a part 2? We're not going to do 12 parts of this conversation, but we could do a second part of this. Would you be interested in a second part that deals with things like why Holdo is a tragic waste of Laura Dern? I'm just joking. Holdo, like things like that. Would people be interested in the 100 episodes? 100 episodes. Episode 50. Why the Porgs are a fundamental part of plot development narrative for. Okay. All right. Well, then we will revisit doing part 2 of this conversation. But I think the interesting thing here is that we're talking about stuff which is good, which is not just the sort of classic stuff that I think has been talked about. But it is interesting because I felt like every time we were doing something, Eric's like, "You're so close to getting it." I'm like, "No, I got it, but what I got is not. I'm so close to being where you want me to be, but not quite." But it was fun.
Mm-hmm. One thing I do want to us capitalize on the next one as we're getting out of here. There are so many people who absolutely love the film who can't understand the idea of somebody not liking the film.
Right.
And that's a huge problem with the way that the fan response has been on both sides.
I agree. Because the reverse is true too. Like
exactly.
That's that vitriol I was talking about, where people are like, "No, it destroys everything." I'm like, this did not destroy filmmaking. Like what?
Yeah. Like I never said it, but I know we spoke about it before that like it's totally cool to like and not like what you like.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like
yeah,
that's
100%. Yeah. So all right. Well, I'm gonna let these gentlemen go. This was fun though. I really enjoyed this, and we will get more. We will have another one. We will schedule it again, chat. Very quickly.
Love the Porgs.
Johnny. Except for the Porgs. Johnny, where can we find more stuff that you're doing? Like in the next 2 minutes.
If you want to jump over to Not So Speedruns after the stream ends, I'll be over there doing the finale for Blades tonight, and then tomorrow night on my channel we start up the new 6 and 20 City Mist, and you can find out more details at twitch.tv/Video Store Cowboy.
Super awesome. You may see more from Johnny elsewhere and other things. So. You may see with stuff relating to me. Also, we were Chad. If you stick around, we'll raid and host them when we're done with this convo. Eric, my friend, good job tonight as well. Thank you so much for the perspective and some very good arguments. I just think I wish you were the one in charge of doing those in the first place and not making them after the fact. But anyway, good job for what you did. So where can the people find you next doing your awesome DMing stuff, sir?
Oh man, I'm over on twitch.tv/Eric Vulgaris. I'm trying to chat with you all in chat. So if you can see me there, just click my name and hit that follow button. But also I'm super active on Twitter. If you like anything about role-playing games, I just talk nonstop about role-playing games on Twitter. Just constantly.
Dude, I get so many good things from your Twitter feed. It's ridiculous. I get so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, it's good stuff. Little seeds of things. I'm like, ooh, yep, I agree. Good stuff. Cool. All right, guys, great stuff. Have a good session tonight, Johnny. I'll head over there in a little bit. Eric, always a pleasure. We will speak to you again with this combo and others, and I will talk to you next time. Chat, can we get some love for the wonderful people on this round table? I'll talk to you soon, guys. Thanks. Alrighty. All right, good stuff. Well, that was cool for a completely impromptu, not totally impromptu, but stream here. That was good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was a specialty stream. I wasn't expecting to stream tonight, but we wanted to do this and kind of get a chance. So there's other stuff that we're going to talk about. We will do a second part of this down the line, and we'll talk about what we didn't discuss today. But thank you all for being here as well. We're going to go over in just a little bit. Don't do it yet, but we're going to go over and read Speedy. While I have you here, I need your help, people. I need your help. We are doing a new game starting this month, which is called Esper Genesis, which is a mix of Star Wars, Phantasy Star, and Mass Effect. It's just as cool as it sounds, based on D&D 5th edition rules. It's going to be on Friday, February 23rd, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. But we're going to be doing a Thunderclap, which is basically a micro-targeted social media campaign, essentially, which is going to be happening at the... Oh, thank you, Boof. Thank you very much, Boof. which is going to be happening at 7:30 p.m. So if you can go to that link that I put up there and sign up for it, again, it doesn't mine data, it doesn't cost any money, it doesn't do anything. It just will send out a tweet from the account or Facebook from the account or whatever you put in there. And by the way, if you have Facebook and Twitter, those count as two things, not just one. If you can do that for me, it would be a big help. We have at last check about 34 people. We need to get up to 100 to really make this thing go. If we can get a lot of attention to Espergenesis, it's going to be a big deal for the channel, and you'll get a lot more attention on the other things we do here. So if you could do that, would be awesome. One of the things we do here you will see tomorrow, because we will be continuing Adventures of Middle-earth, my J.R.R. Tolkien campaign, which has been super freaking awesome, with Trendane, Terry Toons, Will from Encounter Roleplay, and Amal Omatar. Really love this campaign, and you guys will get to see more of it tomorrow at noon Eastern, so please make sure you step by for that. After which I'll be over at GOG with my, I think, although I'm not 100% sure, D&D with GOG, playing Storm King's Thunder. If it's not D&D, then I'll be continuing Divinity Original Sin 2, my playthrough over there. So it's going to be awesome stuff. Now, with that said, we are going to be doing a raid, people, and the raid works this way. If you are not a sub, do the Arvanauts Have Landed, followed by lowercase Twitch, uppercase raid. If you are a sub, please do the Arvanauts Have Landed, followed by Arvin E, lowercase, then uppercase H, then lowercase YPE, but please don't do it until you hear my audio outro. And as I said, we're going to be heading over to do that at Speedy's channel in just a minute. If you haven't done so already, please consider supporting the channel, not just through the Thunderclap, but through the Patreon. That's !ArvTreon. Of course, a lot of cool stuff you can get for yourself and the channel. By subbing to the channel, we've had a lot of more subs of late, so I'd love to see that increase. And the shop, the !Arv shop, will get you over to the shop as well. If you want to see past broadcasts of this channel and this stream and others, including this show, which I will put up tomorrow, you can do that over at YouTube on my YouTube channel with !ArvTube. And if you want to yell at each other more about this topic, please do so in my Discord with !ArvCord. So that is going to do it for me for today. And we are going to go over to, wait a second, I'm going to pop up the stream in just a minute because he should be streaming. I'm sure he is streaming right now. Please for to be streaming. Where is he? I demand that he stream right this moment. There he is. That's what I'm talking about. So we're going to go over to speedruns, where we get to see the conclusion of Blades in the Dark 6 and 20. You guys should be checking this out. This stuff is really good, guys, legit. So let's definitely do that, again, as soon as you hear my audio outro. Thanks to everyone who made this awesome tonight. Thank you to Dragon Spear, to Kilobyte, to 10 of Clubs. Quick note, Stump-O-Matic, your epic poem is coming tomorrow. Quick note, your epic poem is en route tomorrow, Stump. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you to my wonderful mods, Dragon Spear, Kilobyte, 10 of Clubs. Thank you to my wonderful subscribers, Dragon Spear, Kilobyte, Lucathea, Nonstop, and Stump-O-Matic. Thanks as well to my Patreon supporters, including Stump-O-Matic and 10 of Clubs and elsewhere, Dragon Spear as well, and Kilobyte. Thank you guys all so much for the Patreon support too. Thank you to my viewers, Dr. Sleepytime, ECAG, EMC, Eric Vulgaris. Great job today, man. Thank you. Thank you to Fram, to Hot and Foamy, Jagtris, Kooky Canuck, Cosmos RPG. I don't think I've seen you in here before, Cosmos. Thank you. So I hope you like what you saw and heard, and we'll follow and continue to do stuff. Modest Tim. Thank you to Marinda, to Old Fort 84, to PKD Fan, Poltergeist 0. Thank you to Roix. What's up, Roix? Good to see you, man. Thank you to Spider Trider, who I do think I've seen in here before. Thank you to Steve Hoare. I don't think I've seen you in here, Steve. So again, I hope you like what you saw and heard, and we'll follow and support in the ways that I described. And thank you, of course, to Takanjia, you Christensen, and Vacant. Thanks, guys. Also, good chat, good discussion I saw going on in chat. I tried to interact with it when I could, but I was also doing a bunch of things. So thank you guys all so much. You're the best. And you'll see more, hopefully, this conversation in the near future. But tomorrow, Adventures of Middle-earth, Tuesday, noon Eastern. And right now, we're going to go over to, oh, good, cool. Thank you, Cosmos. I'm glad you were part of it, you're able to watch it. Now we're going to go over, again, don't do this till you hear my audio outro. We're going to go over right here. We're going to go over to Not So Speedruns. Oh, awesome, man. Thanks, Spider. We're going to go over to Not So Speedruns. We're going to hit them up for a raid, and we're going to see how they do it on the Blades in the Dark side, as it were. But let's go over there and give them some love as soon as you hear my audio outro. That's it for me. Thanks, everyone. Much love. Best viewers on Twitch. Until I talk to you tomorrow, be good to each other. Have a good night.
was fresh and new, when it all seemed clear to you, when your aim was straight and true. Well, your mind untroubled by the questions in the dark, content to